Hi there, Mike Perez with Mastering the Young Band at MikePerezBand.com. This video is going to talk about my chromatic scales pages from my Essential Foundation supplemental warm-up and technique book for the young band. These chromatic scales pages, I am really proud of how these are formatted. If you've ever taught the chromatic scale to beginners, to a beginning band, you'll know that it can be a really challenging process for young band students if they don't have a lot of exposure to chromatics. Early in my career, I would just start the chromatic scale and try to teach chromatics through the chromatic scale, and it was too big of a leap for my students. So these chromatic scale pages are scaffolded, and the way they're built, I'm really proud of, and I think you're going to find your students are going to learn the chromatic scale in a much deeper and better way because of the way they are written. Now, more on that in a moment. Chromatic scales for me are really an end of the year beginning band activity. You have wanted your beginners to have had exposure to chromatics through my Chromatics Basics pages, through chromatic warm-up pages, and even through their long tones. You want them to have seen a lot of different types of chromatics before jumping into the chromatic scale. Now, what you're going to see in the way that these pages are written, they're written in 4-note chunks. So the students will play 4 notes, they'll repeat the note that they played the 4th note, and then they'll play up, and then they build 8 or 6 notes to 8 notes together. So the way it scaffolds really gives students a lot of repetition on their chromatic scale. Rather than just trying to learn the chromatic scale all the way up and all the way down, this is really scaffolded, and I find that it really helps your students to understand the chromatic scale and get a lot of repetition on it. Now, when you're playing through these exercises, I do recommend tempo 60 for the chromatic scale, not 72. So take your metronome slower than you do. That way the students have time to note name and finger and have a little bit more processing time going through these scales. Now, you heard me mention note naming. It is real important that you note name each exercise before you play it. B flat, B, C, C sharp, stop. C sharp, D, and so on. Have your students note name it. Then have them note name and finger it. Brass players, maybe second time, they position and finger it. 1st, 7th, 6th, 5th, stop, and so on. Now, as you know, chromatics for brass are always so much simpler for them than they are for woodwinds if you use the positions approach to their fingerings, because then they're just thinking 1, 7, 6, 5, 4, and so on. It's so much easier. In fact, sometimes for brass players, it's so much easier thinking of chromatics through positions. Sometimes they want to just neglect the notes and just memorize the pattern. You do want them to say the note name, but do have them say the positions too to make those connections. At the bottom of the chromatic basic sheet, just like with my chromatic basics, chromatic warm-ups, as well as, well, not my long tones pages, but my chromatics pages, I always put a piano keyboard. That way you and the students can reference notes. A student will run into a note like D sharp, and they'll go, I don't know D sharp. You go, okay, put your finger on D sharp on your piano keyboard, find it. D sharp is the same as what? Oh, E flat. You know the fingering for E flat. Okay, here we go. That's why I put that piano keyboard at the bottom of my chromatic sheets, to make those inharmonic relationships for your students. That way they see it and understand why certain notes have 2 names, why some only have 1 name, and so on. When you are note naming, for instance, with your saxophones, when they have a chromatic F sharp, and by the way, those are notated on the student parts with CHR, as well as the conductor score, it says CHR as well. When they go to their chromatic fingerings, actually have them say chromatic. So for instance, your saxophones, they're going to go E, F, chromatic F sharp, G, stop. Have them say chromatic F sharp. When they're descending, chromatic G flat, as well as your clarinets. Also on the flute score, as well as the conductor score, is the reminder for flutes to use bottom thumb. They need to use bottom thumb for their chromatic scale because they're going to be doing that B natural, and you want your students to get used to doing bottom thumb on chromatic passages. I did include, I should say, there's a concert B flat chromatic scale. I did include a concert F chromatic scale. I have to be honest, I don't use that page very often. Every once in a while I might use it, but just using the chromatic B flat pages, usually really helps students to understand the function of chromatics. And then I teach chromatics and other keys through my scale and technique pages of my band daily skills resource. But I did include it in there should it be something that you find is valuable for your program and that works with your curriculum. So that's how I use those chromatic scale pages. I hope you find them useful. I'm really proud of the way they're set up. I think they really help the young band student to understand chromatics and build up in a way that is less overwhelming to them.